Thank you, Gabriel, and bom dia a todos. When I was asked to speak about data privacy and data protection, I thought, where should I focus? Should I start with the data or with the protection? And I like to start with the data because the protection gives you the idea of something that you want to keep under control. Whilst the world we live in is much more about sharing and access and doing that in a trusted manner, as every presenter before me said this morning. It's all about making trusted use of data, sharing data in a trusted manner. And that is because whether you're a public sector organization or a private sector, data has become a strategic asset. And organizations across Europe want to invest more in data to improve worker productivity, to personalize services for their customers, to engage in a different way with customers, to automate some of the more repetitive processes. The problem is, with all of the data that is available, not much of it is put to good use. So the chart that you see on the right says, for example, that only 9% of the organizations that we recently interviewed think that the entirety of the data that they have in their enterprise is used in a valuable manner, right? Whereas 14 plus 36% think that less than 50% of the data that they have, they can use. They can access, they can share as a strategic asset. And to be part of those organizations that think they're drawing good value from the data, they're thinking they need to make a series of investments in the next 2 or 3 years. And skills, of course, is at the top of the list, but data security and data privacy and data protection are also very important to enable that trusted use and access of data. And the policymakers in Europe and in individual countries are all over it, right? GDPR is said and done, it's settled, everybody understands it. Not sure if everybody has implemented it to the spirit of the law. There are things to be done there, but now the focus is on the trust. The Data Governance Act, the Data Act from the European Commission, sharing responsibilities for how data is used and accessed and protected. Think of the new DORA regulation that is coming in Europe. So all of these efforts are now put on the trusted use of data rather than the close control and preventing other people to access the data. So if data privacy is at the top of the list in terms of the preoccupation of enterprises across Europe, there are other aspects that make up and contribute and drive and enable the trusted use of data. Things like ethical use of data and AI, fair use of data and AI, or data sovereignty, which is even a more nebulous concept that everybody is trying to grasp with. It's not just about data sovereignty, data residency. It's a broader concept of how data is accessed, where it is located, how people are using it, what companies are contributing to using and making that data valuable. And all of those preoccupations are, of course, driving investments in certain sets of technologies. And we've heard this morning from all the speakers that there are plenty of tools out there that help with privacy compliance, with authentication, with data classification and discovery. Unfortunately, in a few cases, those tools are implemented in a way that is not too strategic. They're overlaid one on top of the other, trying to solve one problem at a time. But That is an area where we see, of course, a lot of investment. But the tools are only part of the equation, right? And this chart here tells you, based on our surveys, what are the main sources of recent ransomware attacks. And as you can see, there's a variety of causes of ransomware attack, as an example. And many of them have to do with, as one of the presenters said this morning, with squishy meat. Others have to do with processes, lack of compliance, lack of automation. So there's multiple elements to addressing this idea of trusted use of data. And those multiple elements, in our view, have to do with 5 broad areas. And I'll spend a second on this one. Technology is one piece, and you can buy nice data protection software, data classification, data deletion, archival, and so forth and so on, identity and access management tools. But then you want to make people aware and accountable. That is a key part of the cyber or the security strategy for the cyberspace, as our Admiral Marquez said this morning. You have to have processes in place to respond to incidents and make sure that responsibility is shared and coordinated across the entire supply chain, including the IT ecosystem. And that's a big part of what DORA brings to the financial services industry, for instance. You'll have to have a strategy, you have to have a vision, a view of the risks that you're going to face in terms of data protection, what are the legal implications. And of course, treat the data as a strategic asset, right? Good quality data, well-classified data, well-structured processes for retention and deletion decrease the risks of losing data or data theft and ransomware and so forth and so on. So the protection of data, the data privacy capabilities have to do with all of those aspects. And I wanted to bring just one example from public sector. Gabrielle said, I'm part of our government insights team, and I've been looking at all facets of public sector, from government to health to education to transportation for a long time. And even the public sector is thinking about the complexity that people face today, right? So Web3, moving across physical borders, data sharing across government and private sector. What the European Commission is suggesting, for example, in terms of identity and access management, or recommending to do, is to go towards self-sovereign identity, right? And that essentially means making us as individuals responsible for taking care of our data, but also giving us the tools to do so with identity management capabilities that give transparency on how our data is used and shared across different administrations, or what is the minimal set of data that I need to allow access to, for example, to get child allowance or to simply buy a ticket for the metro here in Lisbon, right? This is not to say that one day we'll all have one European digital identity. I doubt that will ever happen, to be honest with you. But this framework of shared responsibility, transparent access to data is part of that foundation of trusted use of data and a step forward in terms of data protection. So this idea of the EU Digital Data Wallet is in that spirit. So if you think of your roadmap towards data protection, again, being private or public sector, doesn't necessarily make a difference in terms of the key pillars that you want to look at, right? You have to look at the strategic vision, at the data curation, at the data quality, at the technology and the processes. So always think of it as in the traditional people, process, and technology in terms of your roadmap to data protection, right? Think of how to collaborate across different teams in the organization. Think of what is the role of the chief HR or people officer now that we all work remotely and in a hybrid way. In this hybrid work environment, HR takes a new role and a new responsibility in terms of how people access data or how they're enabled to connect to enterprise resources. Of course, the legal experts are important. Think of the process, right? Think of the governance, the organization, the training, and updating that training and awareness throughout the teams that are responsible for different data resources. And of course, the technology. But don't think of the technology as, oh, I need to buy the shiny new tool to address that single problem that I'm scared of right now. Think of it, I'm a CISO maybe, but I'm part of a broader set of people that have to take care of a full enterprise architecture. So what are the potential data sets that are at risk? Do an assessment, see where the vulnerabilities are, and based on that, in a strategic manner, purchase the technology that are necessary and that provide good value for money. So hopefully I gave you some food for thought for the rest of the session today, and I'll be around if anyone wants to ask me a question later on. Thank you. Back to you, Gabriel.